In this documentary, I'll be covering Dungeons & Dragons and the positive effects it can have on mental health. But first, what is Dungeons & Dragons? It's a tabletop game created by Gary Gygax and Dave Arneson in 1974. Now it's published by Wizards of the Coast, a subsidiary of Hasbro. In the 80s, it hit some controversy, as all things must do. It was attacked for promoting witchcraft and devil worshipping, and even teaching kids on how to summon demons and other things.
People took the pieces. Now, there's sixes involved in the pieces of the game, but they'd take the pieces of the game, they would throw them in the incinerator or the fireplace, and screams would come out because there seemed to be some kind of spiritual forces inhabiting those pieces, and children would drop out of life. They didn't want to study anymore.
How do you play? There are a lot of rules to the game. If you don't like them, make some up if you want. Make your own world, with your own rules. That's the beauty of the game. There's no one way to play it. Use your imagination. But if you do want to follow established rules and mechanics, then you're going to need these books. The Player Handbook will have everything you need to make a character. The Dungeon Master's Guide is the Dungeon Master's Rulebook. It will give you pointers on how to build your own world, the rules and mechanics of the game, and most importantly, treasure tables. Xenothar's Guide to Everything has extra bits for players and Dungeon Masters. You can find these books on Amazon for $38.99 each. Can't afford 40 quid per book? No worries, you can always Google the information you need. And the most important thing you're going to need, dice. Once you know the basic rules and you have a character, you're all ready to play the game. How do you play? If you want to see something, roll the dice. Want to hit something with your sword? Roll the dice. Want to throw a spell? Roll the dice. Talking to someone, trying to persuade them? Roll the dice. But the game isn't just about dice rolling. It's about role-playing. You're playing a character. Your character.
Why, yes, something does. I do remember something.
You're acting in this world. What world? The Dungeon Master's world.
He does not bless you, but I do.
The enjoyment of the game can be found in situations that the players find themselves in.
Also William, believe it or not, playing as Thog, Ovak, in Jordan's campaign. He was beating a blind man with a blind man's dog. Don't ask how it happened, because I honestly myself I have no bloody idea how did that start. But when I just witnessed that, it was crazy.
But how can you play when there's nothing physical to see? Well, that's the role of the Dungeon Master. It is the job of the DM to tell what the players are seeing and what's happening around them. It's the most stressful role, but the most important. Without the Dungeon Master, there is no game. But of course, the most important rule of the game, don't taunt the DM, because the DM always has the last say. Now, back to the point of the documentary, Dungeons & Dragons isn't just a tabletop game, but a therapeutic game. It can help with social anxiety as you put yourself in social situations with other people. It can also help with depression as well. Here is Dr. Megan Connell, a therapist from America who plays Dungeons & Dragons, adding to the subject.
Well, for both depression and anxiety, social isolation can be a very big factor in things. Depression especially, we get these thoughts like, nobody likes me, nobody wants to have me around or to be around me. And the truth is, our friends, of course, want us around. And playing tabletop role-playing games is such a wonderful thing for people with depression because it has that forced socialization built in. And so they're having to connect with other people and really getting a chance to have more contact with their friends and allow their friends to hopefully, notice what's going on a little bit better and give them these moments to talk and to connect and to communicate with each other. And I think that can be very, very helpful.
It definitely helps me talk to the people outside of work and just basically distract myself from reality.
For anxiety too, especially those who struggle with social anxiety, a lot of that anxiety can sometimes come from ambiguity of social situations, not knowing what's expected or how you're supposed to behave, the right thing to say. And when we're playing a tabletop role-playing game such as Dungeons & Dragons or Pathfinder or Vampire the Masquerade, any one of these, there's that set of rules. And so we know what's expected for us when someone says roll for initiative or roll for insight. we understand our role in the group.
Well, I absolutely love Dungeons and Dragons. I've been, following Dungeons and Dragons for a few years. I haven't played socially since this past year due to social anxiety and panic disorder, and I've been playing online mostly, but only this year I've been mostly playing tabletop and DMing because I've actually got the courage to actually go out and tabletop games and such.
And having those understanding of the rules can help to bring anxiety down, which can really help foster those positive social connections, which then can hopefully bleed to outside feeling more confident and comfortable, around your friends or in different situations. Aside from being a therapeutic dungeon master, I also have a private practice, and I do treat people who struggle with anxiety and depression. And I have found creativity to be one of the most important things for people struggling with depression, especially. Like, when creative people stop creating, that seems to be a lot of times when depression is really starting to seep into their life. And making sure that you're still creating new characters, drawing, painting, writing poetry, making code even. It doesn't have to be like artistic creation, just creation of some kind seems to be so incredibly important to treating these things. And so having a hobby that just in its very nature and at its most basic hits that creative button in a very big way, I think is really important and can be, if, not saying treatment is too hard of a word for it, but it's at least somewhat preventative and helpful.
Basically being creative, performance or quite helps me out with performing as my characters. Both as a dungeon master and as my characters, and really just helps me to develop myself as a person, if you think about it, especially from the artistic perspective, because I do consider myself as a creative person, and Dungeons and Dragons help me out with that. And also, final bit is that this game has allowed me to find a group of really nice people who I consider as really good friends of mine ever since.
Well, I think that one thing to remember is playing a tabletop role-playing game can be therapeutic. It doesn't necessarily make it therapy, right? When you're talking about a therapeutic role-playing game, that's one where it's being facilitated or run by somebody who has training in mental health. And if you're wanting to help your friends who are struggling with depression and just struggling with anxiety, do that by being a good friend. Don't try to be their therapist in game, but you still can have the game be something that's helpful to your friends. I think one of the things that's really important, like when you have a friend who's struggling with something and you know that they've been struggling and they're coming in as a player at your game, just to ask them, like, what do you need tonight?
And there you have it. D&D can be a very helpful tool when it comes to depression and anxiety. And one more thing before we go. Dr. Megan Connell is a co-founder of the channel Geeks Like Us. It has many videos on the subject of psychology and tabletop games. Board in the City in Southampton, a good place to find D&D related books and other merchandise. And with that, I leave you.